I don't have a problem with masturbation. I did a whole video about masturbation. You can find it right here. Now, the whole point of the video was that, this whole no FAP stuff it's kind of foolish, okay? You should only care about masturbating insofar as it not affecting your performance when you need to perform well. You see what I'm saying? I'm not talking sexually, I'm talking about in life, okay? Some guys need to jerk off before they do something stressful. Other guys, if they jerk off before something stressful, they'll fail at it, okay? So you have to gauge yourself and know yourself. I mean, ultimately, that's the point of this channel. It's know thyself, okay? Wise words. And they've been wise words for, 3,000 years so far, and they've stood people in good stead, okay? So you have to know yourself, and that's the point. Now, fapping, okay, fine. Fapping, yes, no, it doesn't really matter. But porn is different. Porn is an addiction, or it can become an addiction, because porn ultimately is like a drug. Like cocaine or alcohol or coffee, okay? It gives you a rush, not the porn in and of itself, of course, but the masturbation that happens while you're watching porn, right? Now, my thinking on pornography is that it is detrimental to a young man's psyche, okay? And it gives him false notions of normal sexuality. And I'm not talking out of my ass. There are a lot of studies that have proved this. Pornography normalizes certain sexual behaviors which are frankly not normal, okay, and quite in fact uncommon, and one could argue quite degenerate. For instance, anal sex, to give just a simple example. Anal sex is quite common in pornography, and pornography today is accessible to all, no matter how young. Right? And pornography portrays anal sex as no big deal, but in point of fact, it's prohibited in the Bible, okay? It's sodomy, yeah, and it's a very bad thing because it is a very bad thing. It is decadent and degenerate, right? But pornography normalizes that, and it normalizes all kinds of things. And what's much worse is that, see, pornography pulls you down a rabbit hole of your own desires. Yeah, because you start to see a certain fetish that you find interesting at first glance, for whatever reason. And you start exploring more and more videos similar to this one, right? Let's just say, I don't know, I'm not going to go into a specific fetish because it's kind of disgusting and I don't really want to talk about it. But suppose there is fetish X, and you see one video about it, and your interest is piqued because of it. Maybe you find it horrifying, maybe you find it very seductive, it doesn't really matter. But you start seeing more videos that portray X, the X fetish. And as you see more and more of the X fetish, you start to think of two things. Number one, you start to think that it's quite normal for people to have that particular fetish because you're seeing so many videos that portray this fetish. That's problem number one. And problem number two, of course, is that you start to get more and more hardcore in that particular fetish. Like a simple example is the furry fetish. When I first heard of furries back in the 90s, I think I heard of it, or earlier, the 80s, I think, right? I thought it was funny. I thought the whole notion of people fucking while they were dressed up in some furry costume was very amusing, right? And, on its face, it is amusing, right? But what happened was that a lot of people who got into the furry community, they started going down this rabbit hole. And this rabbit hole degenerated into not just merely having sex in a funny suit. It started degenerating into bestiality and, in fact, torturing and killing animals in the process of committing sexual acts. Now, this is fucking disgusting. Any normal person would say this. And I bet most of the people who've gotten into the whole furry fetish, when they started out, they found it, as I did, amusing and funny and oddly liberating, right? But as they got more and more into it, it just spiraled down a rabbit hole. A rabbit hole of decadence and degeneracy. Now, this happens, of course, because, see, online, when you get into a specific community, you start to think that everybody in the world thinks as that community does. It becomes a bubble, okay? And that bubble becomes self-reinforcing. And that's what happens when you get into a lot of these pornographic fetishes. You start out quite normal and mildly interested in some particular fetish, but in short order, you just slide down into that fetish, into the most extreme aspects of that fetish. It takes a relatively strong person, or a person, more to the point, a person with experience, to recognize, oh man, I crossed the line quite some time ago. I gotta take a step back here. Especially young people. They don't know enough about life and about themselves and about what is normal sexual attitudes to know where the line has been crossed, where the line between just a normal, if perhaps eccentric, fetish is concerned, and out degeneracy and decadence. And see, the problem is that pornography, a lot of these porn sites that show this kind of decadence, right, it normalizes it because you're seeing so much of it. You're on Pornhub, you see some fetish, X fetish, and you see all of these other videos portraying the same fetish, the same sexual dynamic, the same whatever, and it's not just like furries. It can be like, for instance, abuse. I've seen videos on Pornhub that show quote unquote faked abuse, but it's so fake that it could have been real as far as I'm concerned. And it shows how men degrade women in the most disgusting manner possible, right? And it's not just one video, it's not just 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 videos, it's 50 videos, 100 videos, one after the other, and they all portray the same sexual fetish. And they all portray, the thing is, it turned me off completely because I saw one of these videos and it showed a man, a faceless man, but the close-up was on the woman. And they showed this woman, her head being forced on the guy's penis. She's deep-throating the guy. And when she's done, she's actually gasping for breath and her head is pulled off his dick. And then the woman is slapped in the face. That's not normal. On the contrary, it's horrifying. It's morally repugnant. It's not, sexual enjoyment. It's a form of torture, and it's depicted perhaps as fictional, rather. But it's the effect is as if it were real, and it's horrifying and it's wrong. But the problem is that, see, a young person who does not know any better will see that and say to himself, oh, that's normal, that's okay, I can do that to the girl I'm dealing with in real life. And he pulls this shit on some girl in real life. And what do you fucking think the consequences of that are going to be, huh? Forget about the morality of it. There is no morality, it's despicable. But the consequences to the kid who thinks that this is normal. You see? You see how dangerous this is, especially if you're young? Even if you're not that young, you're 25 or 30 or 35, you can fall into this spiral of normalization, okay? And that's why pornography, the easy, accessible pornography that we have today, you have to cut that shit off. Now, before I move on this issue, I was getting all hot and bothered because of this shit, because it does outrage me on a moral level, okay? But, don't take me as some prude or some shit like that. You guys have seen my content, You know that I am under no illusions about women. You know that I don't put them up on pedestals or any shit like that. And the fact that I don't, and I'm morally outraged by this kind of porn, well, fucking proves my fucking point, right? This shit crosses the line. But the thing is, see, if you're surrounded by it in your online journey, if you will, then you think it's normal. It's fucking not normal. Okay? Now, the other problem with pornography, apart from the fact that it normalizes things that are not fucking normal, is that you start to depend sexually on pornography. You can't get off without it. Okay? And when you depend on something in order for that thing to give you pleasure, then that is an addiction. That's something that you don't want in any situation. You don't want to be addicted to Coke. You don't want to be addicted to booze. You don't want to be addicted to coffee or pot or anything. No matter how harmless it might be, you never want to be addicted to anything, including porn. There's no problem in enjoying these things once in a while. Sure, doing a line of Coke once in a while or doing a bong hit with some friends, it's fun. It's no big deal. Like the one time, the once in a while, yeah? But all the time, if you need it, that's the problem. And you got to cut that out, okay? If you cannot get a hard-on without porn, then you got a serious fucking problem, okay? If you cannot get sexually aroused by an actual woman, but need to watch porn, Jesus fucking Christ, man, you got serious issues. And you got to cut that shit out. Because that's the thing about addiction. The solution to it is easy. You just cut it out. See, most guys who are addicted, and I've known a couple. I mean, I myself do not have an addictive personality, but I've met a few guys who have been addicted to different things, right? Principally coke, actually. Now, they always try to negotiate the issue. That, yeah, they're addicted and it's bad, but you know, they're going to just cut down and kind of like lower it. Okay, not do as much. They're not going to do a whole 8-ball every fucking day. They're going to do an 8-ball on the weekends or some shit like that, right? This kind of negotiation never fucking works. Never. In coke, in coffee, in cigarettes, in porn, in anything. Any drug that you are addicted to, if you try to negotiate, just lower your dosage as opposed to just cutting it out, no, you're not breaking that cycle of addiction. Oh no, you're just tuning it back for a bit to assuage your conscience before you turn the dial back up to 11 and go for broke again, and with the inevitable consequences that it'll have again. No, so don't try to negotiate with your addiction. Once you recognize that you're addicted, once you recognize that you cannot have any kind of pleasure, sexual pleasure, without porn, or that is not porn dependent, you got to cut it out cold turkey. And of course, it's not going to be pleasant for the first few days. But it's just the first few days, okay? Look, this is actually kind of funny, you know, because we are all addicted to food, if you think about it. Of course, it's foolish because you need food to survive. But, you know, I've been on a couple of water fasts, right, back in the day. And a couple of years ago, I did one. It lasted 13 days, right? No food, just water, right? And I remember quite clearly that the first day and a half were tough. But by the second full day, and then the third and fourth, easy, no problem. I didn't have any problem whatsoever maintaining the water fast. It's the first few days. It's those first couple of days, 3, 4, 5 days maybe, that's tough. But then you get used to it. Your body recovers, it recuperates. I experienced that. I mean, I've never been addicted to any substance, thank goodness, right? But yeah, I was addicted to food, and so I cut that addiction cold turkey. And yeah, it was like I said, 2 days. And I've talked to other guys who have been addicted to substance abuses of different sorts, and they say often it's between 2 days and a week, yeah? And porn, I would imagine, is no different. 2 days to a week. And after a week, you'll be fine. Now, why do guys go into porn addiction? Why do they, like, fap like fucking monkeys while watching a computer screen or whatever the fuck? Well, because they're lonely. It's not complicated. Yeah, they're lonely, and they find it easier to, you know, type into their browser window pornhub.com and start cruising around and finding whatever fetish they get off on than to go out into the world and find some girl with which to enjoy their fetish or their sexual proclivity, whatsoever it may be, assuming it's, of course, legal, right? So it's easier, yeah? And that's the thing that in our current culture, man, that fucking kills us. I mean, we are so addicted to convenience. And it's easier to watch some porn, jerk off, and feel like an ersatz version of having had sex with an actual girl than to, in fact, go out into the world and find a real girl and do what you want to do with her, yeah? Because, of course, it takes a whole lot more time and effort to get a real girl. You gotta wine and dine her, you gotta, you know, text her and do game and shit like that, right? Whereas with porn, you know, let's say for the sake of argument that jerking off to porn produces 40% of the enjoyment that you would have from actually having a date and fucking some real girl. Let's just say for the sake of argument that, you know, fucking a girlfriend produces 100% pleasure and just jerking off to porn produces 40% pleasure, right? Well, then, you know, 3 sessions of porn pretty much equals 1 session with a real life girl now, doesn't it, right? Yeah, and so a lot of guys are like, you know, fuck the effort of finding a girlfriend, I'm just gonna watch porn. Oh, I know, it's the convenience, but convenience kills. Yeah, because you get addicted to the convenience, yeah? Just like you get addicted to the porn in and of itself. Being addicted to convenience robs you of motivation. If you have readily accessible porn and you jerk off and you get 40% enjoyment, as I stated hypothetically, right? You get 40% enjoyment. And so soon enough, you're going to be just doing like, fuck finding a real girl. I'm just going to jerk off to porn. You know, it's good enough, right? And you're not going to be motivated to go out into the world. But if you cut out porn, and yeah, you're going to jerk off on your own just to your imagination, but after a while, you're just going to be fucking bored with it. It's not going to stimulate you enough. And of course not, right? And that will drive you, give you the motivation to go out into the wider world and get a real woman. And which is ultimately what you want, because do you want to be living a fantasy land, or do you want to be living reality? It's easier, but it's less fulfilling in the long run. Okay? Because in the short term, sure, it's fulfilling. But in the long term, what happens is that you start to realize that you've put all of this time behind you and you have nothing to show for it, right? And you could say, well, you know, you dated some girl for a year and you broke up, and what do you have to show for that? Well, yeah, that's very true, but in that year of having to deal with this girlfriend, I learned shitloads. I learned shitloads about her. I learned shitloads about women in general because of her, and I learned shitloads about myself. When I'm just doing porn, I'm not learning anything. There's no input. I'm not picking up anything new. On the contrary, the whole pornographic experience is designed so that you don't see anything or experience anything out of the ordinary, or more correctly, outside of the parameters that you want. See? Because that's the whole point. It's pandering to you. It wants to make you happy and give you exactly what you want. Whereas when you're with a real life girl, yeah, she wants to make you happy if you have somebody relatively decent, right? But still, even though she has the best of intentions insofar as the relationship is concerned, she's going to be her own person. And she's going to act in ways that irritate you, or even sometimes might antagonize you, and that you're going to have to deal with one way or another. You're going to have to fine-tune yourself and somehow convince her to fine-tune herself to fit you better. That constant negotiation, which is actually a good thing in and of itself, because it teaches you more about yourself and about the world and about how to handle the world. And not just girls, but people in your business or your career or what have you, and people in different places that you might encounter, right? That negotiation is inherently valuable. But there is no such negotiation, no such growth, no such learning when you're addicted to porn. No. The whole notion of porn is to give you exactly what you want. And that, paradoxically, is bad. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to do a video about pandering. Because there are a lot of people in our current society that pander to you, right? And that don't want to collide with you. They don't want to go against what you're thinking. They want to, you know, go with the grain, if you will. Right? Go with your grain. They want to make you happy. They want to give you what you expect. And that is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, like, I'm figuring that some people who are watching this video, some of my audience members, aren't going to like it, and they're going to give it a thumbs down because it goes against what they think, what they prefer, what they like. Well, you know, tough luck. I don't give a shit, right? Because I'm doing the channel and this content because it's what I think, right? It's what I think, and what I think is healthy for a young guy. And a lot of times the things that are healthy for a young guy, like don't watch porn, don't get addicted, don't get sucked into that shit, right? Well, yeah, it's unpleasant short term, but long term it's beneficial. But fucking long term, medium term it's beneficial. Even short term it's fucking beneficial, okay? Yeah, that's the thing about porn, it panders to you. It panders to you, it gives you what you want. And so much of our contemporary society is all about that, of people giving you what you want, irrespective of whether it's good for you or bad for you. Yeah? I mean, fucking McDonald's, right? They give you these gigantic cheeseburgers with about 50,000 fucking calories or whatever the fuck, right? With all kinds of sauces and chemicals that will light your taste buds up, right? And you wolf that shit down. And you know that it's garbage for your body, right? And you do it, right? Because they're fucking pandering to you, right? They want your money. They want your money. They want your attention. I mean, nowadays, especially online, attention is money, after all, right? And so when these porn sites, right, they give you the fetish that you enjoy, yeah, it's pandering to you. And you have to avoid this shit. You know, I'm going to quit this video now. Yeah, because I'm realizing that I'm going into the area of pandering, and this is something I want to talk about more. So, yeah, here's the end of the video.